You're listening to the Veteran Etc. podcast, as there's always more to be said about a veteran. Join your host, Mike Kim, a veteran, ex-monk, seasoned war trauma therapist, and writer, as he shares his years of research in veteran readjustment culture and the meaning of warrior life. Now, here's your host, Mike Kim.
We're here on Veteran Etc., the podcast that focuses on veteran culture and the culture of readjustment. In this episode, I'm just flattered because this person's presence has lingered in my mind for decades. This is a person who I came across on public television. My hippie views and world of documentaries ended up taking me into finding a Frontline documentary regarding the Battle of Mogadishu. And one of the speakers, one of the Rangers from the Battle of Mogadishu ended up being one of the documentary speakers, and his testimony has touched my life, and I have carried him for a while. And if it wasn't for coming across him on YouTube, I think it would be one of these lost experiences, virtual experiences that truly would not be reconciled unless we have his words with my words today. Michael Kurth. Michael Kurth is a Airborne Ranger, not just a tabbed Airborne Ranger, a regiment, Ranger regiment, trooper, soldier, hardcore veteran who has contributed to the veteran community in more ways than one. I'd like to thank Victor Baum from IAVA. He was able to let me contact Mike Kurth, and we've been able to kind of interview him today and get his read on the veteran reality and also the reality that he experienced, and through his eyes, a chapter in the book, The Battle of Mogadishu by Matthew Eversman. If you get it, I guarantee, please get this book and read the chapter Through My Eyes by Michael Kurth. It is truly a contribution to military literature. And with all that being said, welcome to Veteran Etc., Michael.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Thanks for all the kind words as well. Much appreciated.
Well, those words are valid. And let me start off with a hard topic here, because I think many folks get confused with the movie Black Hawk Down. The movie was done in 2001. The book was written in 1999. And I had come across your narrative in the 90s through the well-done Frontline documentary regarding the Battle of Mogadishu. And I know folks will read your chapter from the book Battle of Mogadishu. The thing is, can you share with the viewers what are like some major differences from the movie Black Hawk Down and the reality?
Well, the biggest point that I noticed from actually living through these events and the movie itself was the volume of fire in the movie wasn't near the amount that we actually saw. That was actually downplayed, which I can understand from a Hollywood aspect, because it would have been unbelievable. There's no way it was that bad or that horrific. And I can understand why they did do that. The other part was a lot of characters actually got molded into a single character. So everything you actually saw on the screen did happen. It may not have happened to that person or in that timeline, or they may not have, you know, certain people were at the crash site, certain people weren't. Like they portrayed me as being at the crash site. I never got to the crash site. I was probably one house or two houses over from the crash site. But just to make the storyline more tellable and able to focus on certain characters, they kind of consolidated stories and molded it to a certain character to be portrayed in the movie.
Yes. Well, one thing that I got, well, not from the movie for sure, but one thing that I either got from people that I had heard from, or from something that I came to read, and that is that you were actually the one on the radio to make the call regarding the Black Hawk being shot down. Am
Yeah.
I right?
No, you're correct on that. I was the first one on the radio because I was our platoon RTO at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, before we went on this mission, I had just been given my team. I was going to be a team leader. But once we were deployed to Mogadishu, the platoon sergeant made a call and he's like, I need to put you back on the radio because that's the best for the platoon. I don't want to break in a new RTO on this mission. I didn't like it, but I understand in hindsight, that was the best call to make. So when I noticed that the bird was going down and it had crashed, nobody had come over to the net yet. And I was like, hey, we have a bird down. And we had several types of birds in the air. And I was like, hey, dummy, tell them what bird's going down so they at least have a clue, you know. And I was like, hey, we got a Black Hawk that's down. And then as soon as that came over the net, they were trying to figure out which one, where it was, who had eyes on it, and so forth. And radio traffic got a little bit frantic because we're trying to figure out where to go and how to get there and who was actually down, you know, because we had other birds in the air. We had intel birds in the air. We had C2 bird in the air. Little birds were also up there as well. But it was like, yeah, we got a bird down, but they need to know that it's Black Hawk that went down, you know.
Well, I think that in all the haze of battle, something like that is how could I say, it's all understandable. And I'm just amazed as far as comparing, you know, reading the Mark Bowden book, Black Hawk Down, seeing the movie, reading your account, and reading other pieces and talking to other people. One way or another, people don't understand combat as far as being up close and personal. One thing that I got from your chapter, and I'd like you to elaborate on, is the way you were flying in. And I think that even the movie couldn't capture it, but it had me kind of blunted there as I was reading, because you're kind of like in this no man's land in your mind, right? And you're flying into Mogadishu, and as you're about to approach your objective, it's I don't know. I want to know more about that, because the way you wrote that, I was just lost in it.
Oh, about flying into the
Yeah.
actual city. Okay. Yeah. Well, the flight plan was we flew over the water for the majority of the flight. And so we're over the ocean and you see the waves rolling in, and it's very calm and it's serene and it's almost very peaceful. And then we made a hard left over the land and it immediately changed. And the vibe and the bird changed. Everybody, as soon as we got over land, it was like, okay, we know we're about 3 minutes out. And that's when you start doing your gear check, making sure your weapon's still on safe, making sure you're ready, locked and loaded. You have your gloves on, you've got your goggles on. And then one of my things that I would do is I would sit there and try and spot the actual target, to get eyes on the target, to see what the lay of the land was around the target building.
Mm-hmm.
And once I was able to spot that and we got close, you already started hearing gunfire. which was not the norm for us. You know, normally we'd get on the ground and it was never a shot fired. We only had a few missions where shots were exchanged. By the time we got to the ejective building and the birds flared and they were getting ready to drop ropes, the brownout was so bad the pilots couldn't even see out the front window. You know, we couldn't see the ground. We couldn't see anything. We just had to just trust that the ropes were actually on the ground when we descended down on them. And like I said, the volume of fire was already intense before we even landed, before we even hit the ground. And that's when we kind of knew things were going to be a little bit different this time, you know, and that was already kind of explained to us when we went in, because we knew we were going into the hornet's nest and things were going to be different, but we just didn't know how different they were going to be. And it turned out that that mission was completely different from all our other missions as well, you know.
You when you look at that, I know that Marines were also kind of like not, I wouldn't say angry, but you know, I heard that when it came to Somalia, that there was this this issue of like, well, what's actually really going on, and how are we expendable? And I was just wondering, did that come across your mind as far as how things were carried out, you know, from the people way up top, not so much from regiment?
Well, I mean, Marines were initially the first ones on the ground back in December of 1992. You know, they were the ones on CNN getting on the beach, approaching on this peacekeeping mission. That's how it started out, you know. Our Task Force Ranger was on a completely different mission. It was not about peacekeeping. It was about going, capturing a deed, and removing him from power. And that's why
So that was a commando, that was a distinct commando mission that was set out for you. And that's what Rangers, if you can explain a little bit, I want to come back to this, but the role of Rangers, a lot of people, they may get caught up with the myth of TV and Rambo and all these movies, but the reality is, from my understanding, I want you to complete this. My understanding is that Rangers focus on these type of commando missions.
In the 90s, Ranger Regiment really wore two hats. It was the general army stuff, the raids, the ambushes, the patrolling, that type of stuff. But then we also did special operations as far as like airfield seizures, going and doing certain raids, high target value objectives and targets and personnel. Nowadays, Rangers are very much all special operations. They don't even focus on the general army missions anymore. They're part of SOCOM, the special operations community, and they work side by side with everybody else in SOCOM. You know, CAG, which is formerly Delta, the SEALs, pararescues, Force Recon. They're all interchangeable now. Back in the 90s, we were kind of lower tier on the special operations community. So basically, we were providing security for Delta, pardon me. So we were providing security on the ground, while Delta, who's way more proficient than Rangers are to go in, secure the targets, eliminate the enemy without killing the key personnel needed to be taken. You know, Rangers were at that time a more blunt force to go and just take down the entire objective and not have to worry about who to select to pull out. You know, that's a more Delta mission back then. And then after that deployment, the Ranger training started stepping up so we could do more missions to support the other, SOCOM units and be more involved in the special operations. And eventually in the late 90s, they switched over to all special ops. Instead of trying to do two things, they just concentrate on doing the special operations side of the house.
Well, with your great humility, I just want to point out, and again, I'm only I'm a textbook guru, I'm a military historian. I'm a master of understanding military culture, but and I served but I was not a ranger. And so I don't want to speak for you. But what I will say is this, that your tribe, being Ranger Regiment, you know, the adaptability to be able to have so many different skills to adapt to combat in many ways. After reading everything and talking to different people, Mogadishu is a place where you kind of see, the true heart of Rangers as far as being able to adapt.
Yes, that's one of the things, is adapt and overcome is something you heard a lot. It's like something changed, adapt and overcome. And something you would always hear in Ranger School or in regiment itself or in the company level is make it happen, Ranger. And it's like, well, what make it happen? And that's exactly what happened on October 3 and 4. I always get asked, Coach, well, didn't you have a backup plan? Didn't you have a contingency plan? And we did. We totally 100% did. We just kept running out of them because things kept going the wrong way. And were we making decisions on the fly and making it up as we go? Yes. I go, that's why we had to run out of the city the next day, because we ran out of room on the vehicles. And when we ran out of room, and my platoon sergeant tells me, hey, we have to take the heel toe express out. He's like, we're going to run behind the vehicles. And I'm like, okay. Well, as soon as they made that first right turn, the vehicles took off, leaving us in the dust. And so we had to figure out how we were going to fight and get our way out of there. When my weapon jams and I can't unjam it and I don't have a way to protect myself, I just literally had to keep running, until I could finally acquire another weapon, actually return fire and help defend my buddies. Because if I'm not shooting, that means somebody's not being covered. But I had to figure out how to get another weapon. And once I got one, I was able to defend my Ranger buddies and pull security and help them cross roads as well, But you can't wait for somebody to tell you to do something. You have to do it on your own accord. And that's, our motto, sua sponte, of their own accord. You have to make that happen. You have to help yourself out. You just don't sit there and wait for orders. And at that time, I was 22 years old, but it was the training that helped me do that, is because I was well trained and well prepared to make decisions on the run and make those choices and do the right thing to help my Ranger buddies out.
Would you say is something that veterans can take away with what you just described? Because I know that when we wear a uniform, it's one way, but do you think that there are certain things from Ranger Regiment that you picked up on that also has helped you with readjustment as a veteran?
Yeah, I think that's a double-edged sword, because there's a lot of things that do help me get along in day-to-day life and readjusting into the regiment. But then there, on the flip side of that, there's also things that kind of held me back and didn't help me transition into civilian life, like not wanting to accept help. I mean, it took me until 2018 before I registered with the VA. I got out in 1996. That's probably one of the dumbest things I've ever done in my life, because I didn't want to accept the fact that I could use help and needed to get help and needed to get counseling. And my earned benefits were there for me. It's not a gift. It's something that I earned through my years of service, and I should be able to collect on them because it's there for me to help me. And the fact I waited that long to do that is just lunacy. It really is. And and people kept telling me to do it, and I was like, yeah, I'll get around to it. I'll get around to it. And once I did, I'm glad I did, because it's a service there to actually assist me, and there's a lot of great programs. Is it a headache signing up for it? Yes, it can be. Yeah, but it's well worth it in the end. but the things I did get from regiment is, you know, the discipline, the focus, the leadership, how to lead, how to be a good leader, and how not to be a bad leader. You know, how to build a team and hone those team skills and accomplish goals together, not just go and be the lone ranger by yourself. You have to build a team. You got to surround yourself with good people that have the same focus as you do and same goals as you do. And that's how you get through life. You can't do it by yourself. You've got to have a network around you. And in regiment, we had a great network. It was all the guys that wanted to challenge themselves and do hard things, to do the hard missions. And hey, I'll do that. I'll take care of it, you know?
That's why I wouldn't say, and I'm not speaking for you. I'm just kind of, because of your humility. I know you mentioned, so that folks would know the importance of seeking help, but your humble description of asking for help. The thing about it is that while you were in regiment, the support structure was there where you could, go in and out of the collective and the self. And when in the veteran world, there's nothing there. And that's why my interpretation of you, myself, and others who've kind of delayed, and especially you, I just want to commend you for not just seeking help, but actually giving help in the different things that you're involved in. I'm always impressed to hear about different things that you're tied to, and if you could share with folks what are the different things that kind of keep you going and keep you motivated.
I think I've started mentoring guys online through, it was a Ranger website called armyranger.com, and they have a mentoring section to where you could take somebody under your wing and give them some history, give them some workouts, teach them some Ranger history about what they're getting ready to do, and prepare them before they leave, before they ship out. And I did that for about 2 or 3 years, and I was actually able to get about 7 or 8 guys into regiment.
Wow.
And they made it and went on
Impressive.
several deployments, and then they came back onto the website and started mentoring as well, which I like that. And they had more up-to-date information. My information was 15, 20 years old. They had the fresh. It was a different system. I could give them history and the backgrounds, but they knew exactly how to prepare these new guys to what they were, the updated version. So I kind of stepped away from that. And then about 5 years ago, I was asked to speak at a GoRuck event for the Mogadishu Mile. And I didn't even know what GoRuck was. And basically, it's a military style endurance event where they have a 24-hour, a 12-hour, and a 6-hour event. And a lot of them are based on themes, and one of them being the Mogadishu Mile. So I spoke at two years in a row, and the second year they asked me if I wanted to come on board to be a cadre to actually lead these events and plan them and do the routes and pass on my past military experience to not just veterans, but civilians that wanted to go out and push themselves and get outside their comfort zone and still learn some history. This past weekend, I was just in Pittsburgh, and it was a custom event, but they wanted it to revolve around the Whiskey Rebellion, which is the first federal excise tax that started back in 1791. So we did, 2 basic events and a scavenger hunt, but it was all team building and becoming one and focusing and, finishing as a team. It's not a race. It's not a competition. It's team building, learning how to get from point A to point B in a timely manner, and, helping each other out, being a team and building that cohesiveness and teamwork.
That's outstanding. And if you can let folks know a little bit, as far as they may have gotten a taste of it a little bit from the movie or from the book, but the Mogadishu Mile, can you say a little bit about that?
Okay. Yeah. the plan was for all of us is to be on vehicles and ride out of there on armored vehicles driven by, I think it was Malaysians.
Mhm.
We were using their armored vehicles, and 10th Mountain they teamed up with 10th Mountain to come secure us and to drive us out. Well, our casualty rate was so high is that we ran out of room on those vehicles. So I think it was 18 to 25 of us were left, and we were supposed to run alongside the vehicles. Well, the vehicles took off, leaving us behind, and we had to run out and defend ourselves by ourselves
Mm.
until we got to a certain point. And it was probably about a mile guesstimate doing that. And then once we got to a certain point, which was just past our objective building, we were able to rally up, link up, and there was more vehicles there waiting. It turns out I was one of the last ones to actually get on the vehicle, and everybody else literally had to run all the way back to the stadium because the communication there was, I mean, I was the only Ranger on this ambulance. And I told the driver to stop. I still had Ranger buddies that need to get on. He's like, I have to follow them. I was like, where are they going? I was like, I have no idea. I couldn't get anybody on the radio, so I had no idea where I was going. The driver was just following the vehicle in front of him. The medics frantically trying to save this guy that was potentially bleeding out. You know, he was trying to stick an IV as we're bouncing along the road. It was pure chaos because like I said, we had contingency plans, but things kept going south.
Yeah, and let me stop you here because it's very similar, and I'm not going to say the same exact thing, but it's kind of like what Mike, or maybe you disagree or disagree with me, but when Mike Tyson says, you know, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face, right? Is that pretty
No,
much
that's
what?
very, very much so correct. And not only we did get punched in the face, we got knocked down several times, and we had to stand up, and
Yes.
you couldn't do the standing 8 count. You had to get up immediately and go right back into it.
Right. And that's what's really impressive. I think people don't understand this. And even if they would spread the narrative as a case study for, I think, when I say pre-mobilization training, especially convoy, I think you guys could write the $1 million, rule book for that, textbook for that, because I just found that some of the things that Rangers are known for, and I know you're part of this background. A lot of people don't understand the importance as far as rehearsal, training, equipment. I mean, I get all this from the book chapter, folks. So if you get the book Battle of Mogadishu, you're going to get into Mike Kurth's narrative. You will see kind of like a lot of things that you're not going to find in a lot of books by Ernest Hemingway in regards to war. You're not Phil Clay's redeployments. I'm not ragging on these books. I'm not downing these books. I'm just saying there are other narratives, and that narrative that I share with you regarding Mike Kurth's narrative from his book chapter. It just kind of gives you insight into Ranger culture, the culture of war, etc. Can you finish me off on that? Because I spoke a lot, but I feel as though you would give better justice to this.
Yeah. When actually I was Matt Eversman and Raleigh Cash came to me and said, hey, we're doing this project. Would you mind contributing a chapter of what you went through on October 3 and 4? And I was like, absolutely. I think that's a great idea. I think that story needs to be told. And the way I mean, I like writing. I've always been good at it. And I wanted to explain my story in a way that anybody could pick it up, no matter how old they are, and understand it, and understand what I saw, what I felt, what I was witnessing, and for a lay person to pick it up and be able to read it and understand it. And I didn't just want to tell the good stuff, or the horrible stuff. I want, even stuff that the dark side of things that most people don't want to even admit or talk about, much less publish in written word, And one of my darkest moments, I was actually pinned down behind a pile of rocks that was not big enough to cover me at all.
Mm.
And I was by myself. I was trying to cross the street, but the volume of fire was too high that I had to literally seek any cover I could find in order to not get shot. And within 30 to 40 seconds, my mind went super dark very fast. And to the point where I was like, wait, you know what? If I get up and just run until I get shot, then I don't have to do anything. I can just sit at the casualty collection point and just ride this thing out. Then immediately I was like, that's the most coward thing you could ever think of or do. Because you have all this protection gear on. You've got a K-pod, you've got a vest. If you get shot, you will survive. If you don't, you're not going to see it coming. So just focus on what you got to do. If your number comes up, your number comes up. And that's not the most easiest thing to admit or write down or put on paper or make public. But I ask myself, I go, that's what happens. People need to know these things. There's other people that are going to read this to go, wow, I wasn't the only one. Somebody else felt that way. And after talking with buddies years later, each one of us had that come to Jesus talk to ourselves at some point. We had to say, hey, just focus at the task at hand, and that's it. Don't worry about it, and just do what needs to be done. And you just keep fighting until you can't anymore. And that's it. Once you had that talk with yourself, that mission, even though the situation kept getting more and more dire, it was so much easier to continue doing the missions because you had already come to peace that whatever happens, happens. And I think that's probably the most important part of that chapter is that, yes, your mind goes dark. You have these dark thoughts. If you don't execute them, that's great. It's okay to have those thoughts. That's human nature. We're not robots. And people need to understand that it's human feelings. Fight or flight is real for everybody. It's how you overcome that. And the fact that I had those dark thoughts, is it a little bit embarrassing? Yes. But I'm proud of the fact that I didn't follow through with them. I'm proud of the fact that I was able to talk myself into doing my job, to not let my buddies down, and to stay in the fight until I couldn't anymore. And I think that needs to be told. And I think people need to be aware that it's okay to have those dark thoughts. That's just human nature. What makes a difference is you not following through with those dark thoughts and continue on staying in the fight for your buddies to your right and your left. That's what's important. And I think that's something that needs to be told. Marcus Luttrell said the same thing during the Lone Survivor when he admitted he dropped his gun in a gunfight, which is the worst thing you can do. But the fact that he was the only one to survive and told the truth on how he reacted, I have very much respect for that because it's not the easy thing to do. He could have told a different story, made himself look like Superman or the hero, but he told the truth and what actually did happen. And that helps everybody going that, yes, those guys aren't robots. It's human nature. That's what happens. And I think other vets need to realize that too as well and go, yeah, not everything goes to plan. You're not going to do everything correct. It's going to be other things taking place that you have to adapt and overcome those, And I think the more times people hear that, it makes it better and easier for other veterans to come back and direct it. And it's like, okay, I'm not the only one that feels this way. And it's like, no, you're not. That's widespread. And I think the more that gets told, the more it's going to help our veterans coming back, today.
Yeah, you inspire me because I have some shame in the sense that I as I told you I was a super hard charger back in the 80s and everything, and then I end up being a monk, and then I end up deploying and not having much of a background in the present way of war fighting. And I feel like I let certain people down, at certain times, and someone like you who, like I tell people, I've carried you for many, many years. And without even meeting you, again, I heard the PBS public radio. Who knows? Maybe I was at Yale, smoking a doob or something like that. Seeing your documentary, um, going through graduate school. But I was really moved by just moved by your life and epic proportion. And then for you to share this, I think it is helpful to me, and it's helpful to others to hear this type of narrative. Let me ask you this: what you know I know Mike Kurth, you know Battle of Mogadishu. I know Mike Kurth. After our audience kind of gets these two movements. One movement that I think that a lot of people don't get from warfighters is they don't know much about the person going into the military or into war. And I was just wondering, what can you share a little bit about your background and how you ended up with the Rangers?
Yeah, I was actually, I was, let's see, just turned 20. I was living on my own, trying to put myself through school. I was bartending and tried to attend 8 a.m. classes. So we know that's really not a good combination, being 20 years old in the bar business and trying to put yourself through school supporting yourself. Just gotten let go because obviously I was doing too much partying and not enough studying, and I couldn't find another job, and decided to go to the Army recruitment office. And they were like, yes, you can get the GI Bill. And I was like, okay. Well, immediately I wanted to be, the Green Beret. He's like, oh no, you have to be in for 2 years. You can't sign up for that. You have to be an E5 and so and so and so and so. I was like, well, who's this dude in the black beret? He's like, oh, they're Rangers. They're crazy. You don't want to do that. I'm like, okay, well, who's this guy in the blue beret? He's like, they're airborne. And I was just like, I don't like heights.
Mhm.
He's like, who's the badass out of all these guys? And he was like, the Green Berets. And I was like, who's the next badass? And they were like, the Rangers. And I was like, oh, I want to do Rangers, but I want to jump out of planes. And they're like, no, you have to jump out of planes or you can't be a Ranger. And I was like, okay, I'll go to war. I had no idea what I was signing up for. I really didn't. I had no clue what I was getting myself into. And of course, I get shipped off and I get held over in Atlanta, Georgia, and they had to put me up in a hotel. And then on the flight from Atlanta to Columbus, I meet Mr. Dominic Pilla, and he had a Ranger contract as well. And he told me exactly what I was getting into. And I was just like, oh man, I hope I can do this. But we became fast friends, and me, him, and Casey Joyce were the Three Musketeers all through basic training, through airborne school, through RIP. We got into Bravo Company 3rd Ranger Battalion together. Unfortunately, I lost both of them on October 3rd.
Oh,
which,
wow.
yeah. But yeah, I didn't know what I was getting into. Once I found out, I was all about it. And I wanted to push myself. I wanted to see if I could actually make it and be a Ranger Regiment Ranger and do all the hardcore things. And especially back in the early 90s, there wasn't a lot of African Americans
Right.
in the line companies. There was no gray man mode for me. I stuck out like a sore thumb. It was immediately, if I made a mistake, it was very, very noticeable because there was no hiding for me at all. That's just what it was. But it made me a better Ranger because I always had to keep my everything in line and together. And I had to work twice as hard just to blend in, because if I did make a mistake, they were going to see it faster than anybody else. So when I messed up in grand fashion. It was just, and I paid for it, but I learned from it and I didn't do that again. So, I mean, I've always been that type of person to do well and exceed. And I've always kind of been a natural leader, but once I got into regiment, it really helped me become a more focused and a better leader, and better at team building and getting everybody on task and keeping them on task and working towards a goal, you know.
Yeah, one thing that I would say, when, there's always the argument about, oh, American exceptionalism and this or that. I would say, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, that American exceptionalism, it's not so much that we think we're bigger and badder. There's some guys that think that way, but it's more an issue of like what you just described and what I wanted to do and what I try to do now and what you try to do now. And that's just to be better, the vision of being exceptional, and that vision, there's no crime in, just like you said earlier, which a great psychoanalyst here in New York, Ed Sukenik, said, about the thoughts in your head, that there's nothing wrong with having negative thoughts or even positive thoughts. It's how you actualize them. And your story that you just described regarding regiment is something about that exceptional vision, that I think, the media needs to kind of understand more, instead of focusing on the negative aspects of exceptionalism.
Yeah. It's, I don't know how, like I said, when you talk about exceptionalism, I think you always want to be better. You always want to improve. One of my biggest sayings is complacency kills.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a huge thing. Me personally, I know I have to have goals. I need to have objectives, because if I don't, I'm just going to flounder around and get myself in some sort of trouble one way or the other. So I need to be constantly focused on something, focused on a goal, getting to an objective. And then once I accomplish that, I need to start on something else. I'm always constantly adding and removing and accomplishing goals throughout the year. Because if I don't, there's no telling where, I'm going to end up dead in a ditch somewhere, because I'm just not focused on something. And that's one of the things I teach when I do these Go Ruck events. It's like, you got to plan a goal. You got to get to the end. You got to get there as a team. You need to help your teammates out, and it's just, it just helps, having those goals and working towards something. I know it helps me, and I'm sure there's another vet out there that probably is the same way, but doesn't realize it yet. They need to start making goals and start doing stuff that helps and benefits them and the people around them,
Awesome. In the military, I'm going to give you another confession, and that is, my gait, for some reason, even though I'm tall, I'm kind of I don't know, just not deformed, but I don't know, my torso is a lot longer than my legs. So
Yeah.
this dynamic, when rucking, I'm limited. So people think, oh man, Kim's like, he loves running, with packs, he loves, but you laugh because where I'm going, where I'm going with this. And I wanted to get your advice on this, because I don't want, as a 54-year-old man, I don't want to keep on breaking my back. But like with rucks, I can't do a regular ruck march. I have to run that mother. And I'm
Yeah.
just wondering because you guys are the masters, Rangers are the masters of rucking and ruck running. If you could give myself, as well as my audience, some tips, not just on rucking, but I'd also ask regarding ruck running, because there are guys like me, again, like I said, that unusual torso, the Mongolian horseman, body, long torso and short legs, and limited stride. Please take it
It's
away.
almost, it's not really a run. It's almost like a glide.
Okay.
Like you're moving, but when you run, you're kind of going up and you're going down. When you're ruck, you just want to stay as low to the ground as possible, and just, it's almost like a shuffle, but you're going faster because your gait is smaller. You've got a smaller stride. You're just doing it at a quicker pace, but you don't want to go. So
funny that you laugh. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what did you just say?
It's like a shuffle. It's just, you got a shorter gait, but you want to stay as low as the ground instead of going, when you're running, you're bouncing up and down. But when you're shuffle, you're just doing that little short man shuffle. I just don't know how. I mean, it is a thing. It totally is 100% a thing.
So do you think the pack should be closer? Like
Up higher on your shoulders. Yeah.
Okay.
You don't want it down because it pulls you back. You got to keep it up high and keep it cinched in. Yeah. And when you pack your ruck, you want all the weight up high. You don't want it down at the bottom because it's just going to pull back in your shoulders.
Great. And at times when I go out there, because I run in New York City and I've got like these Ford models running by me, and I'm just like, man, my gait and my age, I can't make that 300 PFT anymore. So I'm just going to put on a ruck and I'm going to run because my body's still strong, upper body. So I'm going to do it. And the thing about it is I started with the Alice and an old Alice pack. Are those pretty good? Because without the frame to get them hunched up, I mean, I want to get into this because you and I have read some things on Vietnam War folks, and some of the Vietnam guys, they were saying, a lot of times they would just have like, just these old packs, that they just kept real tight on their body.
Yeah. Well, of course, GoRuck has a whole line of different types of rucksacks, and they come with handles, so you can actually use them as a weight and work out, like doing curl presses and stuff like that. The Alice pack is just so big and bulky that you can outfit it to where it's not as bad, but it's still very big, you know. And a lot of these things, you're carrying other coupons as well. You're carrying a log. And this past weekend, we had like a 40-foot tree. It had fallen and we trimmed it up and they had to carry that. And it took literally at least 30 people. So you got that big Alice pack that's in the way, and you're carrying other sandbags that are anywhere from 40 pounds to 120 pounds. That big Alice pack is going to be cumbersome. So you want it more streamlined because they have a pouch in there, because we require them to wear either a 20-pound or 30-pound plate, depending on their body weight. So it's got to be able to carry that, plus your water and your snacks and your food and your gear. And like I said, those Alice packs, even though they're great for military operations, it's for these types of events, you want something a little bit more streamlined.
Okay. Thanks for that advice. Again, I want to look a little bit better than, like I said, I don't know. I know you're from Texas, and I used to love living in Texas when I was a monk, because you didn't have to have a certain type of look. You could just go out there and just hit it. But here you gotta look all Gucci, and you gotta, try to run like you're really cool, and I'll just go and break my neck and fall in the water with my luck. So this information is definitely valuable. And I just wanted to ask you before we go, what if you have any last words, and also how people can get in contact with you, get or know more about you. I know I mentioned the book Battle of Mogadishu, but it's also got the title Battle of Mogadishu: The Stories of Those Who Were in Ranger Team or Ranger Mission. I'm not sure the full title.
Well, it's the Battle of Mogadishu, firsthand accounts from the Men of Taskforce Ranger.
Right.
And that's actually a great book, because it's about the same mission, but you hear from 6 different people that were in 6 different areas. So you get 6 different views of the battle.
Wow.
So Matt Eversman was on Chalk 4, and he had to come back, and he was running rear detachment while the mission was going on. Miles Cash was on the ground convoy. Myself, I was in Chalk 3 and had to run out. John Bellman was on the Sea Starbird. He actually roped in on the crash site and stayed at the crash site all night. Dan Schilling was one of the Air Force combat controllers at the crash site, along with Tim Wilkerson, who is a Air Force pararescue on the CSAR bird as well. And even though Bowman and him were on the same bird, they have two different accounts because they were on two different sides of on the wreck. So it's a very informative book, and it's written by guys that were there, I mean, yeah, we had an editor kind of clean it up with our, spelling and pronunciations and run-on sentence because we're Rangers, I mean, it's just, yeah. But
well, I gotta interrupt you because it was so well written that when I first read, and this isn't hating on the book Black Hawk Down, I just, just reading your chapter alone, I was able to kind of create my own movie from reading your book versus taking on the movie from the theater that came out in 2001. The movie was a little bit kind of confusing in many ways. There was just a lot of things in the movie that was like left out. And I just appreciate that you had the range of, going into the different characters, to different, the different locations regarding the mission in your particular way for that chapter. So I mean, what are some other resources that folks can get into if they want to know a little bit more about you?
They can, I'm on Facebook,
Okay.
so Mike Kurth, and then I'm also on Instagram, and those are basically the easiest ways to get a hold of me. I accept all the requests, and that's how you can keep track of me, is probably the best way, because I'm on Facebook quite a bit, whether I'm traveling for GoRuck or for my own personal trips and whatnot. I'm a big foodie, I'm in the restaurant business, so I'm always posting my meals and where I'm eating and what I'm drinking and whatnot, but that's the best way to get a hold of me.
It's awesome. How can folks, if they're in your area, get in touch with some of the things that you're involved in now in the restaurant business?
I currently, I just changed jobs, actually. I'm actually working in the north side of Houston, up in Cypress, Texas, at a restaurant called Frio Hill Country Grill. I just started managing up there. The owner, Anthony Wegman, and we've worked together since 2008, mostly at Lucky's Pub downtown before it closed back in 2020. So I just started there, and I do that. And then, I do some stuff with the local rucking clubs here in town. There's Seabrook Rucking Club, there's Houston Rucking Club. The F3 guys also do some workouts in the area as well. I do quite a bit with them during Go Ruck events and whatnot. Other than that, I keep a pretty simple life, just working and surviving and living.
No, it's great, and thank you for sharing your time with folks at Veteran, etc. Any last words before we end?
No, like I said, complacency kills, man. Set some
Yeah.
goals, work towards them. If
Yeah.
you're a vet and haven't signed up with the VA, do yourself a favor and go do so. I think that's probably the most, even though, like I said, it took me years and years to do it, I wish I would have done it sooner. So I think that's the biggest thing. Yeah. If you need help, yeah.
I think Mike's words are true words of wisdom. If there's anyone that and it's not an issue of it's not an issue of like deserving, but it's more an issue of, as Mike said, an issue of like those are there, those resources are there to help veterans, to empower veterans. And if we don't take advantage of those services, how can we be better for ourselves and for our families and for others? And that's the call that I get, the strong call from Mike Kurth, as well as his strong Ranger spirit, which, I always die being a Marine, but it's guys like Michael Kurth who make me think, man, I wonder if I should have joined the Rangers. For a split second, I say it. But then I also say this, that every Ranger I've come across, they just impress the hell out of me regarding their skill, spirit, just everything, that I admire in human beings as far as excellence and the exceptional vision as we shared here earlier. So thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. And I'd love to have you again, maybe for a panel or another part 2.
Okay, absolutely.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right, take care, man. You have a good one.
Same to you. Be well. Thanks.
Veteran Etc. invites you to join us again with your host, Mike Kim, every Sunday. If the content from this podcast is informative to you, please share the podcast with others. Give a like and/or post something you learned from the episode on social media. If interested in other truly informative podcasts like Veteran Etc., check out cominghomewell.com for a listing of other veteran-based podcasts. Thank you for tuning in.